Orioles GM Mike Elias now joins the set along with myself and Rob Long. Mike, what's going on? How you doing?
Good. How are you, Sarah? Hey, Rob.
How you doing?
Good.
I'm good. I want to get your initial thoughts on how Brandon Hyde and his staff are running the camp, first and foremost.
It's been terrific. The players have been raving about it, which is important to me, and the structure and the pace. Our work days have been great. We've been fortunate with really good weather until today, but just the overall vibe has been awesome. And, I think it's good momentum heading into the second half of spring training. I've been very impressed with the work they've done.
A bad day in Florida is a good day everywhere else, though, Mike. We know that, right?
Yeah.
You bring a perfect combination, scouting background, which means you have baseball gut and instinct, and you mix it with technology. How does that bring the Orioles to a competitor again in the AL East?
Well, I think so. I mean, both things are still important. The technology aspect is growing very rapidly, and it's changing the game. But certainly having that grounding in the traditional part of the game is helpful because, first of all, the technology isn't always available to you, and you've got to make decisions real time. And second of all, that's a perspective. This is still human beings that we're dealing with. These players, have heartbeats, and we want to understand what's going on above the neck with them and in their hearts and in their personal lives and things like that. So having that grounding in the traditional part of the sport's important.
Mike, can you give us and the fans watching a better understanding of some of the technology you're using? I know you can't, tip your hat too much, but just some of the information, some of the camera work, whatever it may be, that's really the forefront of analytics today.
Some of the big ones are, you'll see if you go to a major league park, or really a lot of college parks nowadays, or some of our backfields here in spring training, there's a big black box behind home plate, usually where the press box is. That's a TrackMan radar device. It measures all kinds of stuff about the ball in flight, the ball off the bat. We get a lot of information out of there. There's also this proliferation of these super slow motion, high speed cameras that it's just a really cool teaching tool, just because the quality of the video you're looking at is incredible. And there's a lot of other stuff going on, bat sensors. It's too much to name, but this is really all kicked into high gear, I'd say, in the last 5 years.
Now, we know you're out scouting even down to the high school level. You've been doing some of that since you've been down in Florida. Have high schools embraced that technology? Has it gone that low yet, or is it still at the college level?
No, it's really been a groundswell. Amateur baseball has been very quick to adapt and embrace some of these technologies, and there's a lot of batting cages and baseball academies that are specializing in the use of this stuff. So if you're a high school kid and you want to get the best training, you can go to these places and have one of these devices slapped on you and get some info about yourself. And then you can also send that info out to college coaches now. So it's happening all across the sport.
First and foremost, I think it's crazy that you're even scouting. I mean, you're a GM, but you're out scouting high schools while you're here in Florida. So kudos to you. How involved are you in the Latin America scouting right now? I mean, you're running a lot of operations here, being the GM of a big league team, but how involved are you hands-on day-to-day with Latin America and, I guess, high school scouting here as well?
Day-to-day, we've got Kobe Perez in place now as our director. Came over from the Cleveland Indians, and he's running our international department. So he's got the day-to-day taken care of. I keep in constant touch with him in terms of players we might be going after, especially the big ones. But I'm able to turn my attention towards this organization now that I have him in place, and less worried about the day-to-day operations on the international side. So that's terrific.
Now, we know this ball club right now is not considered to be contenders, but you're still signing free agents. What are you looking for when you look for a free agent that's available to add to this ball club?
Well, we want a good mix here in terms of our defensive options. I think that was an area last year where the team struggled, so we wanted to get some guys in here that could give us some options around the diamond. And I think through the Rule 5 draft and some of the players that we've brought into camp and waiver claims, we've done that. So we've got some competition and choices now, but also pitching. There's always innings to go around, so adding some pitching here and there has been a goal.
You bring up the Rule 5 draft. Richie Martin, Andrew Jackson seem like two pretty good picks out there. How impressed are you specifically with Richie Martin and what he's done in big league camp here?
He looks great defensively. The foot speed that you see from him, the throwing accuracy, the arm he's shown, it's been really better than I expected. I had not seen him since college personally. And his shortstop defense is really shored up. He's a great athlete. He looks like a legitimate major league defensive shortstop to me, so that's huge. I like the way both of those guys have looked in camp. I think they're in strong positions, but we got a long way to go.
You inherited a lot of the young players here, the players that were drafted and signed before you got here. What's your early impression of some of these young arms as well as position players?
We've got some stud arms in the system. Some of them have already kind of reached the major league level, but others in the lower minors. they were high picks the last few years. So I'm really excited about that. We want to kind of shepherd those guys to the big league, keep them healthy. Chris Holt, our minor league pitching coordinator, will be charged with that, and he's already plugging in with those guys and doing some good work. But as you can see here in camp, we've got some position player talent too. I mean, Hayes, Stewart, Diaz, the outfield of the future looks really loaded, and there's some good things to work with.
Is there any scenario you could see yourself going after a free agent this late in spring training? Someone could argue a market like this works in a team like the Orioles' favor. The only major league free agent you signed was Nate Carnes. Is there any scenario you could see bringing someone else?
We're keeping our eye on it. I think there's a good likelihood that the group that we have now, or something very close to this, will be the group that heads back to Baltimore. But we'll keep our eye on that market as well as all other markets, trade markets, the waiver wires, all kinds of things. So it's just something that we'll monitor, and it's got to make sense for us and be something within reach for us.
Mike, Sara brought up the free agency market, which to me is crazy. It seems like more and more every year we're seeing these guys sign later and later. Is that an economic impact or an impact on maybe going back to technology? You're kind of really poking and prodding and seeing whether these guys really fit into these systems.
Yeah, the last couple of years has been on the slower side, where you've got major free agents kind of bleeding into spring training, which isn't ideal, I think, for anybody. I don't know the exact reason for it. I think there's a number of reasons. We could probably talk about it for a half hour if we wanted.
Probably more.
I think one that's not talked about much is this has kind of turned into a deadline-oriented business, like at the trade deadline and signing deadline and so forth, and people kind of wait as late as possible to get the best deal for themselves as they can, and this might be now trickling over into free agency and spilling into spring training. So hopefully it works itself out, but it is what it is right now.
I just want to follow up real quickly on that. You're familiar with Dallas Keuchel, of course, being a part of the Astros organization. It's another free agent that hasn't signed. Are you shocked by a player like that? I mean, you mentioned the market moving slowly, but this is a top line rotation guy. I mean, are you surprised by him?
Well, he's great. I mean, I know him well. He's a great athlete, great competitor. He's got great stuff. He's got a great resume. But, yeah, these things have been happening the last couple of years. I don't really have the answer for it. I'm confident that kind of by the time the bell rings, everyone will be in the right spot. But it's unfortunate that this is bled into spring training for the players' sake, for the team's sake, for the fans' sake. So, we don't want to see this be a permanent situation.
It's funny because you said there's a deadline industry. Fans are like that as well. One of the common questions I get on Sports Talk Radio is how long? Is this a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan? You probably don't know enough yet to know how many years to put this plan into, do you?
There's no way to know.
Right.
It depends on the specifics, depends how the players play, how they develop, our health, all kinds of factors. The important thing for us is we set the right strategy, the right process, and that we're focused on achieving the benchmarks in those process. And I know through experience that if you do it that way and you execute, that the results will follow when they're supposed to follow. So that's the way we're going about things. I'm hopeful that it's going to be as quick and as smart as possible, but we'll just see how it goes.
Mike, 3 months until the draft. You're lucky to have the #1 overall pick for the Orioles. Have you narrowed down to maybe 3 or 4 of the top players in your mind that you're keeping an eye on? How big is this pool in your mind for the #1 overall pick?
I'd say it's about 5 guys right now, and that can evolve throughout the year. Guys will drop off, maybe somebody gets hurt, or guys will get added. But we're excited about the choices that are out there. There's some guys playing really well right now that have either cemented their status towards the top of the draft or are working their way into the top of the draft, high school players, college players. We're keeping our eye on it. Brad Seelick, who's running the amateur scouting department for us, he's all over the place right now. And I feel good about it, and especially after camp breaks, I'm looking forward to going and getting a closer look at some of those guys.
Do you see yourself drafting the best overall player or out of need because this is a young rebuilding group?
No, in the baseball draft, you have to always go for the best overall player. I think fans that are a little more used to football or familiar with the football draft or even with basketball, there's considerations on the roster that take place. We don't really worry about that in baseball because, our draft is a lot more unpredictable, so you want to make sure you're not passing on a better talent because it's not that much of a sure thing. But also some time usually passes between when they get drafted and when they end up in the big leagues, and you don't know what your roster is going to look like 2-3 years out exactly. So we had that in Houston where we had Carlos Correa making his major league debut at like the same time that we drafted Alex Bregman, who was a shortstop, and we were like, you know what, we're not going to worry about it, we'll work it out later, and they're both on the team now. So we're going to take the guy that we feel is the best player.
Both great players, too.
Yeah, seems like you got it down pat over there. Bring it this way. Rob, any last thoughts?
You know what? It's funny you say that about the drafting the best player available. Mountcastle, Ryan Mountcastle was drafted at one position. You know he can hit, but you don't really know what position he can play. You kind of figure out. You'll find a spot for a guy like that who carries a bat from minors to the majors.
Yeah, he's looked really good. He's got a lot of what we call hitability, just a knack for putting the bat in the ball. Plus, he's big and strong, and he has a good swing, so he's got power. He's still really young, and we are exploring him in different places around the diamond because you don't know what the roster composition and where the playing time is going to look at. But we're going to keep developing him at third base. Hopefully that goes well. But we also want first and possibly left field to be options for him as well.
Yeah.
My final question for you is the catching situation. What have you seen from a guy like Cisco that struggled at the plate last season, and he's here crushing homers? It seems like every day he gets a start.
Well, it's spring training, so
Sure.
I don't get too invested in results. But he has looked really good. That's more important. To me, the most important thing has been the defense. I mean, he looks great. He's throwing well. He's better than had been advertised to me defensively, and so we're excited about that. He's young, he's left-handed, and he can catch and throw, and I think he's going to hit. So, we're going to do the right thing for him in terms of his development, but, he's a big part of our future.
Mike, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Mike, thank
Nice
you
to see
so
guys.
much. All right.